If you're an American planning to buy or build a home this year, what I'm about to tell you could mean an extra $15,000 on your bill. And if you're a Canadian wondering whether our lumber actually matters to the United States, the answer just arrived. And it's brutal. The National Association of Home Builders, the biggest voice in American construction, just issued a warning that the U.S. housing market is entering unprecedented instability. Why? Because Donald Trump slapped a 45% tariff on Canadian softwood lumber, thinking he was punishing Canada. Instead, he punished his own people. American builders can't get enough lumber, American families can't afford homes. And sitting quietly with the world's largest softwood lumber reserves, Canada just made a decision that changes everything. We're sending our lumber somewhere else. Let me show you exactly what's happening. Let me give you the numbers because this is where it gets real. The United States imports roughly 30% of all the softwood lumber it uses to build homes. And of that imported lumber, 85% comes from one country, Canada, not Brazil, not Sweden, Canada. Every year, Canadian spruce, pine, and fir gets shipped across the border and turned into the frames of American houses, the beams in American apartments, the studs behind every wall in every new subdivision from Texas to Virginia. A single new American home uses about 15,000 board feet of framing lumber. And for decades, cheap Canadian wood kept those homes affordable. Then Trump decided to start a trade war. First, his Commerce Department more than doubled the anti-dumping and countervailing duties on Canadian lumber, from about 14% up to 35%. Then in September 2025, he added another 10% under Section 232, calling Canadian lumber a national security threat. That's 45% in combined tariffs on the lumber that builds American homes. What does 45% actually mean for a family? It means that the lumber inside your new home just got tens of thousands of dollars more expensive. The NAHB says that even a 10% increase in lumber prices adds $8,000 to $15,000 to the cost of a single new home. We're talking about a 45% tariff wall. Do the math. That's young families in Georgia and Ohio and Arizona who just got priced out of their first home. That's retirees in Florida who can't afford to downsize. That's the American dream getting more expensive because one man decided to punish his neighbor. And who's really paying? Not Canada. American consumers. If you think Canadian lumber matters and this story deserves to be heard, tap that like button. Let's get this in front of every Canadian who needs to see it. But here's where it gets really interesting, because Canada isn't just absorbing the hit. Canada is adapting, and the adaptation is what should terrify Washington. British Columbia, which produces more than half of Canada's lumber output, just announced it's diverting 10% of its exports away from the United States. That's roughly 1 billion board feet of lumber per year being redirected to the United Kingdom, the European Union, and the Middle East. BC is opening a dedicated export promotion office in Britain. The first shipments are expected by mid 2026. Now, think about what that means. 1 billion board feet is enough lumber to build 75,000 American homes. That lumber is now going to London and Frankfurt instead of Houston and Phoenix. Now, stay with me on this, because this next part changes everything. The U.S. Lumber Coalition, which represents American lumber producers, said American mills could replace that volume without batting an eyelid. But here's the number they don't want you to focus on. U.S. sawmills are currently operating at just 64% capacity. They've been running below potential for years. If they could ramp up production that easily, why haven't they already? Because it takes years. It takes permits, it takes workers, and it takes a kind of long-term investment that doesn't happen when trade policy changes every time somebody posts on social media. And this is the part most people missed entirely. Canada isn't just diversifying exports. The Carney government has launched a comprehensive Build Canadian policy that requires Canadian materials, including Canadian lumber, for all federal construction projects. They've committed $2.35 billion in support for the forestry industry. including 1.2 billion in loan guarantees. They're investing in value-added wood products like cross-laminated timber and engineered beams, products that are worth more per board foot and create better paying jobs at home. Do you see the strategy? Instead of shipping raw boards south at discount prices, Canada is processing that lumber domestically, keeping the jobs, keeping the value, and selling finished products at premium prices to global markets. It's the same playbook Carney is running with critical minerals. Don't export the raw material, add value first. Sell the finished product. Keep the wealth in Canada. And the government isn't doing this in secret. They're doing it proudly, publicly, and with a message to every Canadian: your resources, your jobs, your prosperity first. So let's step back and look at the full picture. Because when you connect the dots, something extraordinary emerges. Donald Trump told America it doesn't need Canadian lumber. His exact words: "We have more lumber than they do." That's his claim. Here's the reality: the United States has never produced enough softwood lumber to meet its own demand. Not once. Not in a single year of modern history. They run a structural deficit every single year, and Canadian wood fills that gap. American forests have plenty of trees, sure. But having trees and having a mill, a workforce, a supply chain, and a permit to cut them are very different things. Trump's own NAHB chairman called these tariffs a direct threat to housing affordability. Republican senators in lumber dependent states are begging for exemptions behind closed doors. The American construction industry isn't rallying behind the president. They're sounding the alarm. Meanwhile, look at what's happening on our side of the border. 22 mills have closed since 2022. Over 50 have reduced operations. 5,600 forestry workers have been directly affected. I'm not going to pretend this hasn't hurt. It has. Our lumber communities in British Columbia and Quebec have felt real pain. But here's what makes me proud: Canada didn't panic. Canada didn't beg for the tariffs to be removed. Instead, our government said, "Fine. If you don't want our lumber at a fair price, we'll find buyers who do. And we'll use this moment to build a stronger, more diversified, more resilient industry at home." That's not weakness. That's transformation. That's a country deciding that the old model, where we ship raw resources south and hope Washington plays fair, is finished. And in its place, something better is being built: better jobs, better products, better partnerships, and a lumber industry that doesn't live or die based on the mood of one American president. Carney understands something fundamental that Trump doesn't. You don't build a strong economy by bullying your suppliers. You build it by being the supplier everyone wants. Now, let me be straight with you. This transition is going to take time. Diversifying away from the American market doesn't happen overnight. Our lumber is graded to North American standards, and retooling for European and Asian specifications takes real investment. The CUSMA Trade Review comes up July 1st, and lumber will be right at the center of those negotiations. But the direction is set. Canada is no longer content to be America's discount lumberyard. The Build Canadian policy, the export diversification to Europe and Asia, the investment in value-added products, the $2 billion plus in government support, this is a national strategy, not a reaction. It's a deliberate choice to keep Canadian wealth in Canadian hands. And here's what every Canadian should remember: our forests cover nearly 350 million hectares. That's 9% of all the forests on Earth. This is a resource that belongs to us, to our children, and to their children. And for the first time in a long time, we have leadership that treats it that way. Trump said America doesn't need our lumber. The math says otherwise. His own builders say otherwise. His own home buyers say otherwise. And the markets? They're already saying it louder than anyone. Tell me, how are lumber prices and the housing situation affecting you or your family? Whether you work in forestry, construction, or you're just trying to buy a home, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. This is what happens when Canada has real leadership. And honestly, I think we're just getting started.